Hi, I'm Shaka Hislop, and you're here at Extra Time TV.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Extra Time TV. This is Andres Soklal in the Studio 2.0. We're going to talk about something very exciting for Trinidad Tobago football. It's been the first time in a while we have a really massive match that has a lot of stakes involved. Trinidad Tobago will be taking on Canada in the CONCACAF Nations League play-in spot. Why am I saying play-in? Everybody keeps asking me this because that's what CONCACAF called it, folks. Take it up with CONCACAF, not me. But the whole point of this is that we have the chance. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves. But we have a match against Canada, and if we win this match, we go on to play in the Copa America. And you all know it's no big secret that I'm a huge fan of the Copa America, and in particular, Argentina. But we'll not get into that. But I'm not alone on the set today. We have the one, the only Stephen Hart. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. It's always a pleasure, and your insights, and also last time we had the Who Made This Look Good competition, which Stephen Hart won. Unfortunately, I had to deal with that. The trauma of this for months, but I'm back now. But, he's not just here for his looks, folks. He has insight into, Canadian football, Trinidad Tobago football. We all know this. And if you don't know, you should know. But, Stephen, we'll get straight into this. Before we get into the technical stuff and the formations and the usual, football banter, as somebody who has been a part of both organizations, you are, from Trinidad Tobago, the scale of this match, what is it mean to you?
Well, I mean, it's such a prestigious tournament. It's the oldest international tournament, I believe, in football history. And, it's a situation where I don't think Trinidad Tobago has had to play Canada in a sort of a game to qualify since 2000, I believe, which was the World Cup qualification at the time, So it's been a long time. It's a very prestigious tournament, not only in the sense of its history, but of course the fact that there's a lot of guest teams this time around. So I'm really looking forward to this game.
Yeah, it's a very exciting match, and a lot of people are already speaking about the Copa America, and rightfully so, since the World Cup, we all know about the buzz and, what it meant for the country. And as a nation, we won't get into all the details, but, we're a passionate country. We have our issues, but, this is something that we could all unanimously agree is exciting to look forward to. And, as someone who has been, I'm starting to show a little bit of age. I'm going to hide it a little bit. I've been in some of the heartbreaks before, so I try to temper my expectations, and that's where the analysis comes in, and that's where I'm going to take off my emotional mask as a Trinbagonian and try to speak like a, analytical person. So, Stephen, we're going to head straight into, the actual form guide of both teams. In fact, before we head into the form guide, Kenwin and I spoke about the squad in the previous episode for Trinidad Tobago and Angus Eve. I'm not going to nitpick and go through the entire squad. A notable absentee is Ryan Telfer. A lot of people mention Andron, the young midfielder who played in Argentina for a little while as well. Is there anything that stuck out to you with the lineup, or general thoughts?
No, not at all. Actually, I saw a young Ryan Telfer yesterday, and he's coming off an injury. So no, nothing really. I think the squad looks balanced, and of course Levi is back, and Judah is now part of the squad. So it's an interesting selection.
Yes, and folks, we have the wonderful data from the kind folks of SofaScore. So, I'm just going to pull this up really quickly. Trinidad and Tobago, in the last 5 games in the CONCACAF Nations League, we won 3, obviously we lost 2. 1 was against Curacao, which I think was a little bit of a blip. But, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and then also the Jamaica games that we played, some people had their opinions on that. Obviously it wasn't like an A-list international friendly. It was off the FIFA window, but Angus probably had his reasons for that. But the reason why I'm going to bring that up, and I asked Kenwin this yesterday, a lot of people are looking at the Canada versus Jamaica game. Obviously we know what happened there, and that's why Canada is in the position it's in right now. And I'm making comparisons. And I raised 2 points, and you can let me know what you think. Obviously it's 2 different Jamaica teams. Clearly, in terms of the personnel involved, and not in a disrespectful way. and also in terms of the approach of Jamaica versus the approach of Trinidad when you compare both players. Like I said, the Jamaican team, they have players in the Premier League all over the place, France, all over the place. Do you think that there's anything from that Jamaica versus Canada game that, could truly benefit us from a tactical approach that we could sit and say, okay, that worked, let's try that. What do you think?
Well, a lot of it is mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Canada went into the first Jamaica game in Jamaica. In all honesty, they should have been down in the opening 20 minutes. They weathered the storm, and then they won the game. But sometimes when you win the game, you're not as analytical as you should be. You won, so maybe we played well. That sort of thing. And then in the second game, they seemed to be in control, and then mentally they just let it slip. And Jamaica were hungry. They were fantastic on the night, to be honest. The Manny Gray was on fire, and it caused Canada, but it also raised a lot of questions about the Canadian team.
Yes, because the reason why I said that, even if you go back to the World Cup, where I was impressed with they did well in the qualifiers to get to the World Cup. But one of the things I noticed, and a lot changes from then until now, and now there's a new interim coach, which we'll get to in a little while. One of the things I noticed that they were very strong, in terms of athleticism, and also the finishing was something I noticed was a bit of an issue for them. They would create numerous chances that they were getting in behind the defense of whoever they were playing at the time. But it seemed to me at the time that, the finishing was kind of the one thing that sort of let them down. And of course, and we'll look at the squad in a little bit. Canada has very reputable players. People speak about Alphonso Davies, of course, at first, but there are other guys like Larine and so on. Do you think this is a factor that could probably... And I'm grasping at straws a little bit here. Do you think that this lack of finishing could work in our favor since Angus prides himself on being a pragmatic defensive coach? We could kind of rely on stifling them?
Well, finishing on strikers is a thing that they sort of fall into a form, so to speak. Canada has the ability to score goals with Larin and David. There are two players that are in the top of... Larin was with the top of goal scoring above Mbappe.
Yep.
So, they have the potential to score goals. On the night, anything could happen on the night. Angus has traditionally sort of played a little bit conservative in the first half and looked to go for it in the later parts of the second half of the game, and the only time he's gotten into trouble with that is when the team scores early. Yeah, and Canada, Canada does have that potential to put you under a lot of pressure for long periods of time. I think they have that capacity even better than the United States.
Right? Yeah, go ahead.
So, they can put you under a lot of pressure, so it's one of those things. If you can weather the storm, and then, Canada will start probably thinking about the Jamaica game, and those things start to come into play.
Correct. I'm glad you brought up, Angus, like you said, he prides himself on pragmatism. He prioritizes, locking things down at the back, and then, attack when he needs to. And I'm just going to I'm not going to go through all the formations, but, in the last couple of games in the Nations League, he has tried different solutions. He has a preference. He loves 5 at the back with the 3 center backs. Against El Salvador, he played 4-4-2. And in some cases, I've seen here, most of the time in these games here, I saw he starts with that, 3, basically 5 at the back, and sometimes switches accordingly. A lot of people were saying, and I think actually you were saying as well when we discussed it, that while, and it's not to disagree, but I think, like, for example, in the game against USA, when Dest had that nightmare, when he got the red card, that was a particular case where we could have probably gone for the jugular. And the reason why I'm bringing this point up is in terms of every coach has their philosophy. There is no wrong or right way. I guess you work with the team you have and what you think works. This is a game where he dubbed it the David and Goliath thing. So I'm using the USA game as an example. Sometimes we tend to, as you say, it gets difficulty when we concede goals and then we are forced to attack when that plan A doesn't work. I personally think, and you can let me know what you think, Canada is going to take the initiative. Do you think in some games, in a game like this, which is a one-off game, there's no home or away, that the safety first approach may not be the best approach, or do you think that that may be the best way? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it depends. Do you want to put the game at risk from the very beginning? Hope that you score early. So you basically play the game in 15-minute sort of increments. And do you go in the opening 15 minutes of the game and try and score and see what that does to the opposition mentally? Do you play the first 15 minutes conservatively, get a feel for the game, the pitch, the atmosphere, all these things, and then, the second 15 minutes look to get something out of the game? Little things like that. It is a one-off game, right? But we all know that games are basically won in the second half.
Yeah.
Right. And it all depends on how much confidence your opposition gets out of the first half of the game. I can't speak for Angus and I can't speak for Moro either. But you have to think that both teams are going to think a little bit conservatively in the first half.
Yep.
I really believe that's how the game's going to play out.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked you that question for a reason, because I love the response. Because, as a fan, some people, when they react as fans, they love, I'm guilty of both. I could swing both ways as a fan and somebody who has worked in football, where the tendency to not break the game down the way you did, like in 15-minute increments, where, for example, you don't want to concede goals in the first couple of minutes and then it's a little bit of a disaster. And sometimes, while it sounds cool and attractive, from a tactical perspective, you have to think logically rather than emotionally. And maybe, as you said, each coach, we can't really tell the coaches what to do. But I actually agree. Like, I would have done the same thing. And to kind of contradict that at the same time, while everybody loves attacking football, which I love, I just love football where you take initiative. I would understand in a case like this where, you probably try not to concede in the first 15, 20 minutes, as you said, and then the team gets comfortable. And, you've been in positions like this before. Psychologically, saying this is one thing, but then you have it's a mixed squad. I mean, you have Alvin Jones who's done this before. What is the kind of message you have to transmit to those players in terms of execution? Because you could sit down, you could plan, you could prepare. I think we both know generally what might be the approach from both coaches. But as somebody who has done this before, how do you transmit that calmness to players? And or is it something that you can't control? I would always love to hear your insight on that.
Well, I mean, you're dealing with the emotions of 11 players.
Mm-hmm.
And you really, I mean, you try to let them understand the importance of full concentration and, just focus on what you do well and how that fits into the game plan, et cetera, et cetera. That alone should take away from the nervous element of being in such a big game. But you don't know how each individual is. I mean, no one would have expected Des to lose his mind like that. He's an experienced player. He's played in big games, So you can't tell.
Yeah.
Right. Just try to say, listen, this is what you do well. You know why you've been selected, how it fits into your line, how it fits into the team, and just focus on that.
Yep.
Anything else the game gives you is gravy, right? We would all like to see. Listen, I can't tell you last time I've seen a a game with pure attacking football. Football now is about managing the game, managing the moments, resting with the ball. I mean, there's so many things that's going on in a game now. I mean, I might even say it's kind of a little bit boring now. But the reality is it's a game where you have to manage your emotions, and that's what football is about. You manage your emotions, you do what you do well, and the game will open up certain things to you at some point. And it might be just 2 minutes, and in that 2 minutes, you have to hope something happens for you.
Yep. And there's a reason why I brought this up, because I know you understand. Oftentimes, it's very easy when people look at these games. They look at the players, they look at the formations, and rightfully so. But there's so much more to it. Those little intricacies that you told me about, or I like to say variables that literally could change the outcome of the game. And, that's why the psychological aspect, you are dealing with human beings, and those components, you could have the most, the ideal preparation. There is that X factor that you can't prepare for, and those little components, little situations in the game, the psychological state of the player heading into it, it's something that a lot of people don't know that, coaches have to deal with. They think you just choose a lineup, choose the ideal, squad that looks good on paper. I call them FIFA coaches, and I'm guilty. I play the game, as you can see behind. But I love to delve into those aspects of the game because, like I said, when I started this particular point, it's very easy for us to sit down and nitpick formations and say he should have put this guy in this position. But oftentimes, I've noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the higher levels you go, those details become no longer little details, but, game-deciding situations. And, managing those things is something that is often overlooked. And that's why I go back to this is a one-off game. The stature of the game is a big one. A lot of these guys will be already, I would, if I was one of those players, already thinking ahead to the Copa America. Managing that expectation and getting them to perform, I think, is a real challenge. And, you kind of answered my question before, but it was important for me to get into that point. And that's why we have him on the folks here, folks, Stephen Hart, because, he's been at this level. He understands that, how this goes. But, in addition to all that, Stephen, do you think, because it's happened to teams in the past, that the psychological component, the favorites in these types of ties, it sometimes works against them? Because I remember Marcelo Bielsa saying once, and this is not the exact quote, folks, that, being favorites is a psychological weight on the favorite, but it takes the load off the other team. Are we considered like underdogs in this, or are people still looking at Trinidad and Tobago now like, okay, Trinidad and Tobago, they're a problem? Do you think that Canada are the outright favorites and it can work in their favor, or do you think that people have that respect for Trinidad and Tobago now?
Well, look, a team has gotten to the situation where they're playing to get into the Copa America, right? So you have to go into that game thinking it's one game. The possibility of losing that game is there, right? If you are the so-called favorite. So you have to go into that game, thinking that you are playing the best possible opponent, right? Now, Canada is a wounded animal at the moment. They flew through the World Cup qualification in style. They played in the World Cup. Then they came to the Nations League. They had some losses in games that they should have, you could argue, they should have gotten a result. And they didn't get the result. And of course, the team had so much praise put upon them when they were on a high, that the expectations and the demands are a lot more now, But also, when things were not going good, the criticism was 10 times more than it usually is or was. Mm-hmm. So they are a wounded animal, right? Yeah. And I think that is something Trinidad and Tobago has to be aware of not only the potential quality, but the fact that mentally they will not take this game easily because they have a lot to prove.
Yes. And that's exactly where I brought that point up, because it oftentimes that aspect, exactly what you highlighted there, was overlooked. Yes, they are strong on paper, but they are dealing with exactly the issues you spoke about. So that is definitely a key factor that I really wanted to mention, and I couldn't have stated it any better than you did. But let's talk about the Canadian coach, the interim coach, Mauro Biello, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He took over for a little while, and he had some statements which I'll read out really quickly. We have unfinished business, and we are all solely focused on winning and booking our place into one of the world's biggest tournaments against some of the best competition our sport can offer. This is an important step for our group of players, our program, and Canada as the journey continues towards the FIFA World Cup 2026. So he's thinking ahead. Even though he's an interim coach, he understands the scale. He obviously, the former Montreal Impact coach. What are your general thoughts on, him in general? And, it's just a couple games, so it's kind of difficult to put that in context, but you would be more familiar with him than I would. What are your thoughts on him on that coach?
He was part of John Herdman's staff, but the thing is, he's in the interim. He hasn't gotten the job. He's in the interim. He's doing his best. He would like to have the job, obviously. He's doing, things to the best of his ability. But a lot of Herdman's staff left, and then he's following in the footsteps of the man who took the team to the World Cup. And, that's extremely difficult.
Yes.
Extremely difficult. John Herdman has a aura about him, and he had the team playing at its best. And then Biello, he takes over and starts to hit some bad water, and you kind of feel for him because it's difficult. And as I said, he would like the job, and he would like very much to prove that he can get the team to the Copa America, and then when they get there, possibly do well, at least get into the knockout stages.
Correct. And that's why I brought it up, because there's so many issues behind the scenes that that were overlooked in many other discussions I saw, where taking over from a guy who was charismatic as the previous coach, because he won me over. His style and his proactive way of playing. It caught everyone's eye, especially in the qualifying, not just the results, but just his mannerisms. He had that demeanor about him, and things were going great. But as you said, when things started to wobble, and up there in the position they're in now, it adds that little psychological weight, and we'll see how it turns out. And it's good to get that insight from you, because outside the superficial aspect of looking up his stats and looking at some of the games, there's not much we could really say. He has his own challenges on his end, because we emphasize a lot on Trinidad and Tobago when I spoke to Kenwin. But, these sort of things, we could highlight with the Canadian team that could possibly serve Trinidad and Tobago, or maybe, give a platform for Canada to just bounce back. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah,
so it could go both ways. Let's take a quick look at, I'm not going to pull up all the stats, but for example, the formations used. So for example, against Honduras, I saw they used 3 at the back there, SuperScore providing us with this wonderful data. Also, against Panama, I saw he used 4. Most of these coaches now do have multiple solutions. And the reason why I brought this up, the Canadian team, has players that are doing well, more than well. It's a quality team. And, usually, although there are other teams, and I don't like to do this, but we'll highlight this when we get to the key players, because there are other good players. SuperScore has identified, Alfonso Davies, as one of their key players, naturally so. But in some of the discussions in the Canadian forums and some of the previews I looked at, naturally, it seems like a lot of people and analysts seem to not be entirely happy with him being used in the left back position, which was kind of strange. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, do you need Alfonso Davies at the left back for Canada? I mean, it's a big question, and I can't really answer that, like most people. If that's what the coach thinks, then fair enough. I think they looked better when they had Adekube at the left back position and Alfonso further forward. I think that puts any team under extreme pressure. It pins back their fullback. So that's out for the opposition, really. But I mean, that's a decision for the coaching staff. Canada has a couple of key injuries. Adekube is out. Larea is out. So we're seeing the introduction of some new defenders, some fresh blood. The team is very young. When I say very young, even younger than it was before.
Yep.
So there's going to be an adjustment period. But they do still, their midfield and forward line is potentially very, very dangerous.
I'm glad you brought up the age group because I have this stat here. Canada squad will be the youngest men's national team selection since 2019, with all but one player being under the age of 30. So, that is a very interesting fact that they're going with youth. We were going to talk about key players later on, but let's talk about it now. Obviously, SofaScore highlighted Alfonso Davies, but outside him, you mentioned a bunch of players there. I don't like choosing one player, but are there one or maybe more key players that you think would be very crucial that, Trinidad needs to really focus on that could be truly problematic? I know that's a very vague question, but, in your eyes, outside Alfonso Davies, who do you think should be a key player to look out for Canada?
Well, I think Estacio. I think he's one of the better midfielders today in CONCACAF. He was coming off injury in the last few games, but he seems to be back in full form. He's gotten some games with Porto in the Champions League. I think when he's clicking, the attackers can get the ball closer to the penalty area, and he allows for some penetration centrally. I really do admire him as a player in CONCACAF.
Yep, and of course, when we speak about the key players, we have to speak about Trinidad and Tobago's key players. SuperScore has highlighted Alvin Jones. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of highlighting one player, but we are trying to highlight key players. We all know about Alvin Jones. We all know, everybody know or speak about, that goal, those 2 goals he scored against USA, especially recently. He has a tendency to save those goals for those big games.
Yeah.
He turns up. I even spoke to him before. I said, well, time to unleash another one. But Alvin Jones, in a lot of ways, is which to me it seems strange because I knew obviously the Aubrey Davids and so on, but Alvin Jones is now essentially a senior figure in the team along with Aubrey David, and it's a youngish team. Outside Alvin Jones, is there any other player that you could see being a key player for Trinidad and Tobago? Maybe Levi Garcia.
The goalkeeper has done very well.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, you like Natty, the way he's sort of growing into the team, and I can't see how they would highlight and not mention Levi, because he is since moving to the sort of 9.5 position for his club, and he's done really, really well, and is an absolute handful. I watch his games, when Levi is in full flow, he's not only a delight to watch, but he scores goals.
Yep.
And the potential of having him and more up front is a lot of pace, and that I think is a major factor. If you could get the ball to them in the right areas against maybe even a high back line, they can cause a lot of trouble. So I think, Alvin has had, he's had some really good games on the offensive side. He scores goals, dead ball situations, etc., etc. But yeah, if you have that Natty, Moore, and Levi, you have a squad that could put any backline under a lot of pressure.
Yep, and you would have way more, I would say, deep insight into Levi, because I remember, when he made his senior debut and he scored those 2 goals, the buzz was already around him already, how good he was. And, the evolution from what he was then to what he is now is very exciting to see. As you said, he transformed into this false 9, this number 9 type player. He's getting a lot of goals. And his goal contributions as well. I get information from SofaScore all the time about how he's becoming, as you said, a handful. In fact, I rephrase that. He is a handful. We've known that for a long time now. And, it plays into possibly Angus's approach from just my observation, where we have these fast counter-attacking players who could dribble and take players on. I've even seen him have the ability to hold the ball up and release other players as well. We've now the young Kylie Overy as well, who is explosive and, he can take on defenders 1v1s. So, I'm thinking, and this is where we'll get to the formations. Angus Eve's formation for this game, this is, I want your best. We could only guess, make informed opinions. I'm thinking, the squad he picked and the characteristics of the players, which includes Levi and so on, Alvin Jones will have to face off against Davies on that side of the wing, is to really contain and try to exploit Canada when they push up with those explosive players and hopefully, capitalize on that possible vulnerability to 1v1s. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, if Canada pushes forward their backline, there's going to be a high backline, right? And I mean that would be the approach to try, and you have 2 different players. You can play the ball to Levi to feet, he can hold it up, and he can set more on his way, because he's a player that prefers to plunge and run behind, so yeah, you have those sort of capabilities. The thing is if you decide to play with 5 at the back and a 4-line midfield, then it means one of them would probably not be playing. And then they'll be isolated, and I think it'll be very difficult, because then you're sort of playing in a numbers game, and you're going to be outmatched in terms of the counter attack. Do we have the midfield and the wide players that can get up and down quick enough to support the one player that's going to play on top? So, I don't know what he's going to do, but I think that is something to think about.
Yep, yeah, you're rightfully so, because we've seen situations in the past where that approach was tried. I can't remember the teams right now, but Levi was isolated a couple times. He wasn't able to get that release he needed, where the other team was able to nullify the midfield. And in a lot of ways, Trinidad were just on the back foot, and then that gap between, the midfield and trying to connect with Levi. Levi would have to drop so deep and try to take on players from so deep that it was rendered in a lot of ways. I don't want to use the word useless, but, as you said, it's a numbers game. You have to hope. And the chances are few and far between. So I'm guessing, hopefully, they're able to release these attacking players. So it doesn't become a situation like that where we are relying so much on the counterattack that it never happens. And, I guess we'll see how it turns out, what plan. Angus clearly has a plan, and we'll see how it works out. And then another factor that, before we move on to the formations of Canada and so on, is that we now have a decent array of, free kick solutions. Everybody talks about Alvin Jones, but we have some good free kick takers now, which in the past, we've always had, decent free kick takers. But as you saw against, USA, that sort of kind of woke people up. So that's also an option where we need to really, capitalize on a few, maybe, I'm not saying we may get a few, but the set plays we may have. Do you think, that it's always a good weapon. But do you think the players we've had recently gives Canada something to think about more than usual?
No, of course, yeah. I mean, they'll be aware of it.
Yep. Yeah,
They'll be aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they scouted out all those guys. But it's good for Trinidad and Tobago to have those options. In the past, we've always had pretty decent free kick takers, but as people saw in some of my Instagram clips and so on, I had so much confidence that a goal was going to score that I actually was doing a FIFA video game gesture with his controller behind here at the game, which is an exciting option to have in these tight sort of games. Sometimes you make
set plays are a big part of football.
Yep.
And on the international stage, probably more so because you really don't have the time to work on them as you would like.
Correct.
When you have people that can step up and give you a variety, a right footer hitting from the left side, a left footer hitting from the right side, and proper corners, and that people who could, meet those corners, etc. Because in set plays, delivery is everything.
Yeah.
It's a huge weapon to have.
Yeah, of course, and we all remember that famous game against Mexico. I know you definitely will. That 4-4 game, which many have said, it's the best Gold Cup game ever. We even had a little mini documentary about that, folks. I'll actually put a link below for the international streamers and everybody else to take a look at. Stephen Hart was a part of that mini documentary as well, but it was a lovely story, and it just highlights how delivery is important. That game. Jovan Jones had an amazing delivery with a whole bunch of distractions, and we saw how much of a difference that made. So I know for a fact you've experienced that firsthand in a glorious way. So we spoke about the key players of both teams. We're generally getting an idea of both teams, their tactical approach. So just to end things off, educated guests. What do you think if you had to guess? The general formation that Angus is probably going to start with in this game. What do you think?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, I know. That's a tough one.
I think Angus is going to go with a 4-4-2.
Right.
Levi is healthy. You can't take the chance to say I'm going to bring him on. And then you have the additional attack of Moore. So probably go with a 4-4-2. And he's had his success using that sort of lineup. So I think that's where he's going to go.
Correct. I actually that was my guess as well. I know a lot of people are expecting him to do the 5 at the back thing, but I actually agree. I actually think with the players he called up and looking at the squad, of course we could all be wrong. That's the thing, folks. You can let us know what you think in the live stream, what you think as well. It's not set in stone, but I believe he'll probably go for the 4-4-2 as well. Which, as you know, formations are really kind of like not really set in stone. But that's up there.
I don't particularly pay much attention to that, and I mean it's how you fill space and how you attack space. And
correct.
And if you look at the game of football today, you see multiple formations within the flow of the game all the time. And it depends. I mean, a team might line up with 3 at the back, and really when they're attacking, it's only 2 at the back, and it's not what it used to be. I don't believe that at all. What is more important is how the players fill space, how they attack space, how they balance each other, cover for each other when the attack is on one side of the field. You really can't tell a team's formation for an entire game. They line up for the one way for the kickoff, but then when the game starts, they might start off with a 4-4-2, and then the game's going on, and you see some kind of 2-3-5, and it's just numbers at the end of the day when we start talking about 4-4-2 and 5 at the back. And I know a lot of people don't like when Canada played 3 at the back. but rarely they're not playing three at the back. It's supposed to be five at the back defensively, etc., etc. And if the two wide players are not tucking back inside, then yes, it ends up three at the back. So, these sort of discussions is for rum shop.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said you broke it down the way you did, because I knew you would have answered this way. Because I have in a lot of my reviews, I told people I don't really like to do predictions in a traditional sense, where the score is going to be 2-1 and they're going to use whatever. If you're going to analyze, I believe you really do analyze, and you broke it down brilliantly. Where formations are just essentially is just when you see the starting lineup, just like what media officers would see in the press. You have a general layout, but it's very rarely, if not ever, what you see. And, different scenarios in the games and different, phases and so on. You have different situations, like as you said, your interpretation at three at the back, it changes. It could go from five at the back. It could be just alt-right attacking. It could go to ultra defense. There's so much variations and interpretation. So, like, my paws were raising out. I don't know if folks you could see that on the camera, where that is a point I always wanted to get across in the discussions, where, yes, we'll talk about the formations, and yet, I said this at the beginning, where sometimes people generally say, oh, well, he should have used a 3-4-3, or, the person should have used a 4-3-3. And, that really is more, I would say, a superficial type of discussion, which there's a place for it. But, at the analytical level, the game is so complex, and the scenarios and the in-game situations are so different. When you are in possession, when you are out of possession, those are the key things. And I would actually love one day, which we obviously can't do now, to have a discussion specifically about that, maybe on the EXCV podcast. We'll, have Stephen back. But, that I'm really glad you said it that way, because that's exactly how what you have in this discussion. It's kind of like a broad stroke saying, okay, they're going to play 4-4-2. And that's why I specifically said, like the starting lineup. How do you think they're going to start? Because I know during the game it's going to change. Because even with Angus as well, sometimes you see he starts with the five at the back and it ends up being, 4-3-3 at times. And then, two at the back sometimes, depending on the situation of the game. And then, this is why I love it. Even like now, we're going to get to like the tail end where, I'm going to say like also, Mauro seems to like to start with three at the back or sometimes four at the back, but we know that could change. Do you think he's going to start with the three at the back and have Alphonso Davies, as an outright, attacking winger to start with? Or do you think he's going to go with the four at the back and hang back a little bit?
I think he's going to go with a 4-4-2 as well.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know, because, as I said, they've had some key injuries.
Mm-hmm, right.
He has some new faces in there. So I'm just kind of speculating he's going to go with 4-4-2, which he's had success with. And just looking at this selection, and also for the first time, he has more depth in attack, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some players that have been scoring goals that can come off the bench, So we'll see.
Yes, we'll see. And folks, like I say, I don't like to do the whole prediction. I'm not a fan of predictions, but naturally, because of the nature of media is constructed and so on, there's two sides to me. That's how I started off, and I told Kenwin this yesterday when we did this to take a little pressure off of him. There's the analytical side, and then there is the Trinidad Tobago fan of football. So as a fan, obviously, I'd always want Trinidad Tobago to win. I believe we do have a chance of winning. As you and I said, before we started recording, these are one-off games. As cliche as it sounds, anything can happen. I believe, if a lot of things go the way we want it to, which, it sounds like I'm sitting on a really nice fence, but I genuinely believe we do have a chance. If I didn't, I would have said, listen, wow, this is going to, and it is going to be a tough game, make no mistake. But I genuinely believe that if things go the way we'd like it to, we have a good chance. That's the emotional response. I think from a purely stats and paper perspective, I think on paper, they theoretically, not theoretically, they have players that are playing at, higher levels in different leagues. And they are supposed to, get the result. But we know this is why we had this discussion. You've highlighted the issues that Canada has, and it's far from a done deal. So if at a glance, without any deep analysis, a lot of people say Canada should win easily, but I think it's actually going to be a much narrower game, KG game, and actually it may be tighter than people may realize. And while Canada are the favorites, I think Trinidad are more than capable of sneaking a narrow win. That's my thought. What do you think?
Well, I think, yes, as I said, it's one game, and the possibility of things happening are so multiple.
Yeah.
I mean, you one, you have the environment, the climatic. It's on neutral ground. That's another factor. And then you have one team that's on a high, after winning a game that people didn't expect them to win. Let's face it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk in CONCACAF, not in Trinidad and Tobago, but there's a lot of talk in CONCACAF that the U.S. team were missing a lot of players for the. But listen, you can only play the team that is in front of you.
Correct.
Right? Trinidad and Tobago got the results. All credit to Angus and the players. They got the result. So they're coming off a high, right? They're coming off a high, and then, as I said, Canada is a wounded animal. They were on a run in a game that everybody felt they should have won at home, and they lost. Right? So that alone should tell you the margins that we are talking about. Right?
Yep.
So yeah, anything can happen in this game.
Yep.
Anything can happen in this game.
Correct.
I don't think this game is going to be a game with a lot of goals. I really don't believe that.
Yeah, I believe so as well. And like you rightfully said, if we sit down and look at every possible scenario, we'll probably go insane because there's so much ways it could go. But eventually, it's only going to be one winner in the end. And the fact is, folks, you can let us know what you think in the live stream, especially our international viewers. What your predictions are. If you disagree, if you think it's going to be, a one-sided game completely, that's a good thing. We can all look at this game and interpret it differently. The most we can do is look at all the factors and try to make the best educated guess. And that's why we have guys like Stephen here. He has a lot more insight into things that maybe some of us will not have. So, it's not just, making a guess for the sake of guessing, but you can let us know what you think, because there's a lot of very sophisticated fans out there. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of the viewers I speak to, they do a lot of research, which is very impressive. Some of the comments and, reactions to certain games when they send it to us, I'm genuinely amazed. And what we'll probably start doing is we'll probably start bringing some of you all on. We'll choose a random person and, because I was impressed. And Stephen, next time I'll probably bring one of these guest viewer analysts on. That's what we'll call it. So Stephen will be here.
I read some of the comments sometimes, and they're good. Some of them are spot on.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the prediction business. I mean, if I go horse racing, I'm betting on horse is going to run backwards. No, see, I'm not in the prediction business at all.
Oh yeah, I never liked the word predictions. Like I remember that, and media is they try to shoehorn you into making predictions and even score lines, which is even crazier. But I probably my horse would probably not even enter the race. If I do that whole thing. I would probably go to the wrong race. Who knows? It might be another crab race or something, as we have in Trinidad and Tobago. But with that being said, folks, be sure to get your mobile devices out. You may have seen while this episode has been going on, a QR code has been popping up throughout the entire episode. You can scan that QR code. When you do that, you automatically qualify for a chance to win a copy of EAFC. You may have the chance, or the honor, or the dubious displeasure of playing me. Ask James Saunders, and also Kevin Molino and myself took each other on. We'll be airing that soon. It's wow. Hopefully I win that game. I've heard he's really good. I don't know if he was playing games while he was on national duty while he's so good, Stephen. But I've heard he's really good. So we'll do that. We'll have Phil Shane and Juan Arango doing some commentary on that as well. So like I said, folks, when you scan that QR code, you not only automatically qualify for a chance to win those prizes, but you can leave your comments, thoughts, and suggestions. We do read them. The show revolves around your thoughts. We pay attention to what you say, and you all decide, essentially, a lot of the content that we speak about. So, with that being said, folks, the game is going to be on Saturday. I know different people from different locations. I'm not too sure what your cable listings are. We'll try our best to give you all the best information possible, at least within the Caribbean. I know I have my friends from Malaysia and so on who are very interested in this game. We'll put as much information as possible. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen? Who is going to make it to the Copa America and play against the current World Cup champions and, play in this prestigious tournament? Let's see how it goes. So drop your predictions, your thoughts, and also, Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to get your insight. Your knowledge of the game is always appreciated, and in particularly in this context with Canada and Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks. So see you soon. We'll try to have a watch along. We'll arrange that, and hopefully we'll have a wonderful reaction, hopefully a win after the game. So thank you for joining us.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching Extra Time TV. Don't forget to like and subscribe.